Hey guys, happy Monday, happy June 1st, and happy last week of school. I hope everyone had a good weekend. The plan for this week is I'm going to post a video every day so we can make sure we can try to get done with the book. We might still need to post videos next week too, but I'll try to make them a little bit longer this week. And then all of the work that you have to do today or this whole week there's a check-in question every day, so I want you to still do that. And then if you have any missing assignments, get caught up on that, especially your eighth grade letter. If you didn't finish that, let's try to get that done. And any other assignments, whether it's a project, whether it's just a quick thing you need to add to your slideshow. Let's try to get that done this week so I can fill out report cards. Okay. And then there's no exact path required. If you want to do extra work, you can always do some of the websites that we've been doing all year, and those are listed on the weekly plan as well. Okay. Where's our bookmark? Oh, there we go. So we're in the middle of a chapter. Let's see. That's a lot of pages. We'll see. We'll see how far we go today. But we still have like 70 pages left. Mr. Bondwick, one of the officers asked. You bringing my boy back? The monster asked. Brody took a quick step forward and his tail went to wagging all on its own, but it fell still at the officer's next words. No, sir. You know that. This is Mr. Loftus, the Child Protective Services. We're just here for some of Aiden's things. The monster bristled. You can't take nothing. We can, sir. We're just here for some clothes and his school things. You need to show us his room now. Fine. It's at the back end of the hall. They turned on the lights and they went, flicking the switches and sending the shadows away. Brody followed them back towards Aiden's room. His heart was a jumbled mess of confused anxiety. He knew most of the words that had been said, but he didn't understand their meaning. One officer stood in the hall, his eyes on the monster. The other went into Aiden's room with the skinny man. They started going through Aiden's dresser drawers, taking out clothes and putting them in the box, talking to each other in low voices. Brody watched them. I can't believe it, Patsy said, taking a step back. What? This is it. You can actually find him. I didn't think you had a shot. What are you talking about? Think about it, dummy. They're taking your kid's stuff. They're going to be taking it to him, right? All you gotta do is follow him and he'll be there. Brody's head snapped to Patsy, then back to the people, going through the boy's stuff, to the box full of his clothes. They found Aiden's backpack and put that in the box too. Brody's tail found its wag. Yeah, he said, stepping toward the people. Yeah, you're right, Patsy. A pair of sneakers went into the box, a couple of pairs of socks, a jacket from his closet. The box was almost full. Brody couldn't have stopped wagging if he'd tried. That's it, the police officer said. Let's get out of here. Wait, there's one thing he asked for. The man's eyes roamed the room. Yep, the picture of him and his dog. This is the one he wanted. His voice was quiet, his eyes on the picture. There was sadness in the lines of his face. The man looked around the messy room. It was full of clothes and books and old toys. A video game system sat on the floor, plugged into an old TV. He looked up at the police officer. All this stuff, and the only thing the boy asked for was the picture of him and his dog. And Brody? Brody's heart soared when that man said those words. But believe me, sword doesn't cover it. Not even close. His heart glowed to a gold more glorious than any forever. Because Brody, he'd been walking in darkness too long. Hope had become a thing in the distance, and the sureness of love, and almost begun to replace the memory of love. And memory without sureness can pretty quickly turn into something terrible. Doubt. And doubt is no friend to a lost and wandering soul. Which is what of course Brody has been. But then the man said those words. And all the darkness was gone, and all the hope wrapped itself around like sunlight. His boy. His boy hadn't forgotten him. His boy somewhere was thinking of him. Waiting for him. You, me, together, always. And right then Brody could feel Aiden. He could feel him reaching out across the distance between them, just like Brody had been reaching for him. Brody followed the man and the police officers back down the hall. The monster still waited in the living room, meanness and anger painted across his face. That's it, sir. We'll get out of your way now, the officer said. That's Aiden's stuff, the monster said, eyeing the box. Be sure it gets to him. Don't lose it or mess with it or anything. We won't, sir. We'll bring it all to Aiden. Where is he? The officer's voice when he answered was tired. You know we can't tell you that. And I'd remind you that you are bound by a court-issued restraining order to not get within 500 feet of your son. Aiden's temporary foster parents have a description of you in your vehicle, sir. You get within 500 feet of them or Aiden, and you go back to jail. You've got no right to take my son. The officer, who had opened the door and was already stepping out onto the porch, stopped with a jerk. You killed that boy's dog, he said. His voice was low and cold and quiet, but terribly, terribly hard. Kicked him to death right in front of him, and you broke his nose and blacked the boy's eye. If the neighbors hadn't called us, who knows what would have happened. You don't have the right to call him your son. You're lucky the judge even let you out on bail. I wouldn't have. The monster was seething. He was rocking on his feet and flexing his fingers, but even he knew better than to push it. So all he said was, "He's my boy." The officer opened his mouth to say something more, but his eyes flashing mad. But then he shut his mouth into a tight line and shook his head one time to the side. Because that officer, he was a good man, and he knew what the monster had done. And there were lots of things that he wanted to say, but he was wearing a badge. So all he said was this: "You stay away from that boy. 500 feet." Brody and Patsy were left standing in the room with the monster. Brody knew he needed to follow the officers and the man at the box. He knew he needed to run through the door and hop into their car. But he stood looking at the monster. Words echoed in his head. The words made him want to run at the door and hop into the police car and get to his bruised boy's side as fast as he could. But he didn't. He stood there watching the monster. Because Brody, he'd spent years living with that monster. He learned to watch the monster's eyes and how he held his body and the way he clenched his jaw or tightened his fist. And Brody didn't like what he saw in the monster's eyes when that officer closed the door. "We going after them?" Patsy asked. "Go," Brody said, not taking his eyes off the monster. "Watch them. See which way they go." "What do you mean? Don't you want to—" "Go, Patsy." Patsy looked at Brody for a second, but he wasn't taking his eyes off Aiden's dad. She trotted out through the front door. The monster walked over to the front window, and he pulled the curtain back and peeked out. His jaw clenched, unclenched, clenched. Brody heard car doors slam outside. Brody knew he had to run, and he couldn't let the chance at fighting Aiden slip by. From outside came the gravelly crunch of the car tires pulling away. Brody was one breath from bolting through the door and chasing the car. But then, the monster muttered something, under his breath. The words he spoke were for his own ears. He didn't know the glowing ghost of a dog with raised fur and bared teeth right behind him, growling at his back. But there was, and Brody heard the words too. They were, "I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get my boy back." And the monster reached down the couch and picked up his car keys. Oh man. We'll read chapter 20 as well because it's short. Get some coffee. The monster eased open the front door a crack and peered outside. The police car had left, but its taillights still glowed red at the stop sign at the end of the street. Patsy stood on the sidewalk, her tail swishing anxiously, her eyes on the car. The monster stepped outside and closed the door behind him. He crept to the edge of the porch, staying in the shadows. His eyes were dull and glowing and locked on those taillights. The monster didn't know it, but a true-hearted ghost dog followed at his heels. When the car turned right and disappeared around the corner, the monster jolted into motion. He lurched down the stairs, keys jangling in his hand. His car was parked against the curb, a car that Brody remembered well. Brody's heart was full, and not a good kind of full. It was full of fierceness and ferocity, but also of fear. "What's going on?" Patsy asked. "Aren't we going to follow them?" "He's going after him," Brody said. "He's going after my boy." "This ain't good," Patsy said. "No, it ain't." The monster started the car. The engine revved ragged, but it ran. Through the windows, Brody saw him light a cigarette. Brody hated cigarettes. "What are you going to do?" Patsy asked, looking down at the street. "Whatever I need to," Brody answered, and then he hopped through the dented side of the car and into the back seat behind the monster. The car was filthy, full of old fast food wrappers and empty cans and rumbled up clothes. It reeked of cigarette smoke. Patsy flew through the door and joined him as the monster hit the gas and the car roared away. Like all the scariest moments, he wasn't dumb. He drove carefully. He eased the car up to the stop sign and crept to the intersection, just like he'd slipped out onto the porch. He leaned forward over the steering wheel, searching for the police car. He must have seen it because he smiled. A hungry smile. A monster smile. Fast and sour and then gone quick. But he didn't move the car forward. No, he waited. Because the monster, he was hunting. And hunting monsters don't want to be seen. Listen, Brody, Patsy said. There was an odd tension to her voice, a high pitch of energy. But Brody was too focused on the monster and his broken boy to notice. There's nothing you're going to be able to do. You know that, right? Why don't you just hop out and howl and... That horrific shadowy memory flashed again in Brody's mind. The fear, the danger, and then him running away, abandoning Aiden, and Aiden's terrified voice begging him to come back. Never, Brody spat the word back. Blech, never. Brody spat the word like a bark. This monster attacked my boy Patsy. He hurt him. I'm never leaving. The monster was driving slow. They turned into a different street, a busier one. This ain't your fight anymore, Mutt. You're gone. Let them work it out. Get out for good while you can. Brody's eyes flashed over to Patsy. This is my fight, Patsy, but it's not yours. If you want to leave, go for it. But Aiden will always be my fight. You and me, together always. Away and back. Patsy thought about it. She looked out the window, down at the passing darkness. She shifted her feet, and she looked at Brody, and then away and then back again. And Patsy, she looked like she really wanted to stay, and she looked like she really wanted to go. But Patsy stayed, with doubt in her eyes and 3 meager soul lights circling around her patchy fur, stayed by Brody's side in the monster's car. There were more turns, more cars passed them. The monster was patient. He drove with terrifying focus. Outside, the snow began to fall harder, big feathery flakes falling white through the blackness. The snow hit the grimy windshield and melted. The monster turned on the windshield wipers and then swept back and forth. Patsy paced in the car, looking out at the night and the snow and the cars around them. Then he said, Hilldale Heights? Of course. Brody stretched out the front window. They'd pulled into a wide 3-lane bridge. At the far end, twinkling through the falling snow, were lights of houses. A car passed them and zoomed ahead across the bridge. What's Hilldale Heights? Brody asked. Patsy was circling even more anxiously now. It's a neighborhood, other side of the river, up the hill looking at the town. Bigger houses. Your boy must be there. Suddenly, Patsy stopped pacing. We need to get out now, she said. What? Why? We'll lose him. No, we'll find him. There's nothing else on the other side of the bridge but Hilldale Heights. But we gotta get out. Here, on the bridge. She crouched on the seat, ready to leap, and looked back at the shoulder at him. Come on. Why, Patsy? There's no time to explain. Trust me. Have I steered you wrong yet, Mutt? Come on. She leapt. Her tail disappeared through the side of the door. The car kept humming along. Brody looked at the door. He looked at the monster still driving into the sinister stillness. Brody wanted to stay with the monster. But Brody had a good soul. Believe me, he did. And good souls want to trust. They do. Even when they shouldn't. Brody took 2 running steps and jumped through the door. He landed with running feet and kept his balance. The monster's car rumbled away, spewing exhaust and dripping dirty oil. Patsy stood a ways back under the glow of the streetlight that rose up the building's railing. She wasn't looking at him. The snow, so heavy a moment before, had stopped falling. There was only the starless dark of a clouded sky, and the yellow light of street lamps, and the grinding crunch of the car speeding across the bridge. Brody trotted over to Patsy. She wouldn't look at him. What's going on? He asked. You trusted me, she said. Her voice was hollow, empty. Yeah, he said. So what are we... You're an idiot, she interrupted, but there was no bite in her voice this time. Behind him, Brody heard a low growl. He spun around. 2 hounds stood in the freshly fallen snow on the bridge. Thump, Scully. Their black eyes were steely and unblinking, just like the monster's. Whoa, Brody said, taking a step back. Patsy, run! Oh, she ain't running, a familiar voice said. Brody spun again. It was Darkly and Smoker. They were jogging up behind Patsy. Patsy, who still wouldn't look at Brody. Patsy, who didn't even flinch as Darkly and Smoker trotted up and stood on either side of her. She's right where she wants to be, Darkly said, his gray tongue sloppy in his gleaming teeth. His shoulders rippled under the ghosts of muscle. His eyes were all kinds of evil and hungry and triumphant. And you, Hotshot, are right where we want you to be. And that's the end of the chapter. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow for our next video. All right, bye, guys.